So hi, I'm Mark Skelsey, editor at downsizing.com.au. And today we're going to be talking about the issue of single older women who are at risk of homelessness. It's been a growing problem across Australia. It's actually thought there's around 240,000 single older women over the age of 55 who are at risk of falling into homelessness. And what's interesting is the retirement living industry has this week come out with a report that's suggesting that it could be part of the solution to this pretty bad problem. And I'm very happy to be joined by Ben Myers, who is the Executive Director of the Retirement Living Council. And Ben, welcome to downsizing.com.au.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Super. So, Ben, first of all, I was just wondering if you could run us through, because you've obviously released this report this week. What is the problem with single older women who are having difficulty accessing affordable housing?
Across the country, there's a huge number of older women who are facing homelessness later in life. And when you sit down and look through this issue, there are a large number of reasons why people might find themselves in this situation. And it's not because of some of the stereotype kind of images that you might have. These are people who may have worked very hard through their life, have brought up families, but have found themselves with either very low retirement savings as they finish their time in the workforce, and that leaves them in a very precarious position because they might have some savings, but not enough to qualify for social housing, and are then left to use their savings to pay for rent. Others might find themselves getting divorced after they have retired, or they've just simply been in a situation where, for various reasons, their savings have been lost, and that might be because of bad financial decisions, forms of elder abuse, or other reasons where they find themselves without sufficient money to be homeowners, and but too much money to, in fact, qualify for social housing.
So obviously you released a pretty detailed report this week. We've covered it on downsizing.com.au. And you're suggesting, and this is a new idea to some extent, that the retirement living industry could actually play a key role in delivering affordable housing for single older women. Can you explain to us some of the ideas that you've come up with?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's another interesting thing that the industry has worked through here. We not only stopped to look at the problem of homelessness amongst older women, we actually stopped and recognised that the retirement living industry for quite some time now has been playing a very significant role in supporting people who wouldn't otherwise be able to find safe and secure long-term accommodation. And when you look through the mix of residents in your average retirement village, over 2/3 of them are usually female. A greater proportion than that are actually single. So one thing the industry does very, very well is provide safe and secure homes for single older women. So when you unpack all of that and look through that, we're not only doing a big job here, but there's more that we can do. And so as an industry, we've sat down and really looked through what more we can do and how certain tweaks to some of the government pension and social security arrangements might actually make retirement living far more accessible to a lot more people, ensuring that they have a safe and secure housing arrangement rather than being in very precarious rental situations.
So can you run me through some of those ideas? Because I understand that you're talking about potentially a fairly modest government fund. You're talking about some changes to some of the unusual ways that rent assistance and home care interact with the retirement living sector. You're not talking about radical new parliamentary bills or, whole of government approaches here. It's a bit of tweaking, isn't it? A lot of it.
It is, it's tweaking. And there are two parts to the approach we've taken. One is what can government do to support individuals, to give them more choice? And the other is about how can industry work with government to increase the supply of affordable retirement properties. So in terms of supporting individuals, as we've identified today, the main focus of our paper is about women in the missing middle. These are women who have too much in their retirement savings to qualify for social housing. So they're off the list. They don't have any choice there, but they don't have enough money, or perhaps are too old to qualify for a housing loan. So what are their choices? At the moment, those choices do include retirement living, but often that's not something that many people are aware of. So what we see is a lot of support groups and a lot of people turning to the rental market. And so many people we've spoken to over recent months as we've been putting this paper together have found themselves in a situation where they finished working, their income is limited to perhaps their pension entitlements, but they're having to spend those limited revenue sources plus their savings in a very hot, very competitive rental environment. One lady I was talking to the other day who divorced 12 years ago has moved at least half a dozen times in that 12-year period at a cost of some $2,000 a move, plus the stress and the insecurity that comes with having to find a new home. So finding ways to actually bridge the gap for some people who have limited savings and with some support could access safe and secure retirement homes is a key part of what we've been talking about in our paper. So some of that is about improving the way that awareness is made available about retirement communities, our ability as an industry to reach out and engage with support groups, with individuals, to make them aware of what we're doing and the options that exist. We're also talking about tweaks to the way Commonwealth rental assistance is calculated and the eligibility so that people living in retirement villages or more people living in retirement villages can access Commonwealth rental assistance. We're looking at tweaks to home care payment arrangements so that more people in retirement villages can spend their home care money paying for the services provided generally to residents. So if they live out in the community, they can use their home care money for things that they can't use it for in a retirement community. So these sorts of tweaks will make retirement living far more accessible to a lot more people and end the precariousness of having to rely on 6 to 12 month rental leases and the vagaries of the rental market by giving people long-term, safe and secure housing in a retirement community. On the supply side, it's about how can we incentivise the operators of retirement communities to make more properties available for people with affordability means. We've got one operator in South Australia at the moment who has a beautiful property available for under $60,000. Not many people would know about that, and it's there on their website, but there aren't a lot of those properties. But there are a lot more operators who would be prepared to entertain being in that kind of market with the right policy settings. So we're looking at, can the government offer GST equivalent rebates for people providing affordable housing? Can there be some sort of funding for innovation that allows operators to try new products, to invest in new building mixes, and to collaborate with different groups around the place to provide more affordable housing components in their retirement communities?
So, yeah, a few things there. And look, as you say, retirement living is already providing this this solution. We've only had the retirement living census that came out a few weeks ago and found that the average retirement living unit is about 55% of the surrounding median house price. So it is providing that option already, but there are some barriers that you've identified, the way that rent assistance works, the way that home care funding works, that could be dealt with. But to the point that it is already delivering, there is a pretty good example, isn't there, in the Illawarra region of New South Wales, that was a new development that was specifically built to provide accommodation for single older women. Was that a bit of a catalyst for this report, the Jasmine Grove project?
The Jasmine Grove project is a great example of what the industry can do with support for innovation, and that project delivered homes for people at under $200,000. So for about $199,000, people could secure homes that were theirs for the rest of their life. And that came about through a $600,000 grant from the Australian government, which worked out at around an $80,000 subsidy for each of those homes. So it's a great example of what can be done, but it's only one example of, I guess, the bigger picture that we see the industry can contribute to this great problem in Australia. And I think essentially what we're saying is, for far less than the cost of building homes and paying for the full cost of properties, the industry has some really innovative solutions that it can offer. And like Jasmine Grove, like that example in South Australia, right now there are quite a significant number of people-ready properties, not shovel-ready properties, not ideas that after several more years of conversation we might be able to get out of the ground. These are places that people can move into tomorrow.
And I think the point too, isn't it, that as you mentioned, that the social housing community, if a single older woman goes into a social housing community, it is possible they will be amongst the general population. They could be amongst families, people of all ranges, but these retirement living projects are specifically designed for older people. So that's a key factor as well. You are going in amongst your social group, and evidence has shown that that can have some very significant health benefits as well, Ben, I would have thought.
That's right. These are purpose-built, age-friendly communities. So they're designed to support people to live independently as they get older. They're communities of like-minded individuals. They're communities that also invariably offer access to care. So what we're finding is, because of all three of those elements, the physical design, the community, the access to care, people are living in retirement communities independently for longer than they are in the general public. The average age that someone moves from a retirement village into an aged care facility is often years older than someone going from their home in the suburbs. And that's because of the fact that the social and mental wellness of people is much higher. The risk of falling because of the design is much lower, and that there are simply people around to provide support and care.
Yeah, and so you've come out with this great report. All the facts and figures are there, all the ideas are there. You're catching a bus to Canberra tomorrow, or you're in Brisbane, I think, so it probably would be a plane. How are you going to take the ball down there and get things going? What's going to go on?
Yeah, well, that's always the hard part, isn't it? The idea of getting the rubber to hit the road, so to speak.
That's a much better metaphor, Ben. That's good.
Indeed. So we've been talking to government and indeed the opposition for quite some time now as we've pulled this paper together. What we wanted to do was make sure that the things that we were proposing were workable, that they were reasonable. It's not a grab for cash. It's actually about some really sensible solutions that can see quite a lot of people housed very quickly if government recognises the value of what the industry is doing right now and considers tweaking some of its existing arrangements to ensure that the right people are getting the right support to move in to a retirement community. So I'm very hopeful that we'll get more traction. There's a federal election coming up, and hopefully we can ensure that this is a hot issue. But I think there is a strong awareness in Canberra, but across all state governments similarly, that the issue of homelessness and the risk of homelessness amongst older women is really quite shocking, and that more needs to be done. And like all the problems in our society, it's a question of where the money comes from. I think as an industry, we've put together a really solid proposal that says we're not after heaps of cash. We're not after subsidies. We don't want you to spend money building new properties for us. We want you to help individuals by just changing the eligibility arrangements for funding that they could otherwise get if they were in a rental property, to help them get long-term, safe and secure housing.
Great. Well, look, Ben, thanks for taking us through the report. Downsizing.com.au is going to be watching it closely, watching your discussions closely, watching what the candidates say closely, the election process. As you say, we've got a budget coming up. So good luck with it all. Thanks for taking us through the report. And if you want to read more about it, of course, there's a story in our newsroom as well. So thank you very much, Ben, for joining us here at downsizing.com.au.
Thanks for giving me the chance to have a chat.